Good evening. I am Christopher Hitchens.
And I am Bob Ross.
Right. Now, the last time we were here discussing this show, we kept the focus to the two main characters, Joel and Ellie. This time I believe we should quickly run through the rest of the cast, and how we each feel about the way the characters were translated to the television series from the game.
You mean we're going to cover the entire cast of all these wonderful characters in just one sitting? Beg your pardon, Hitch, but don't you think that'll make for quite the lengthy video?
No, because I can make my piece short and sweet, and here it is. All of the characters from the game are largely superior to their television counterparts. And there you have it. I'm done. The rest is all you, Bob.
Well, gee, Chris, what about characters like Frank and Kathleen, who were absent from the game but had such a spectacular presence on screen?
Well, for starters, Frank was in the game, but him being merely a corpse meant he was unable to waste much of my time on an overly praised love story so early in the narrative. And that Kathleen didn't exist in the game is easily the best thing about the character. For a story that's greatest strength is the realistic and believable nature of its characters. Casting a high-pitched, bitchy and doughy middle-aged woman as the leader of a faction capable of overthrowing the military seems an odd choice to say the least.
Well then, how about a normal-pitched and masculine woman with massive biceps as a potential faction leader? Would that work better?
Let's not go there quite yet, Bob.
Well then, I happen to think that Frank's transformation from a crusty old corpse to such a vibrant and charismatic person was just a fantastic decision. In a story with so much darkness all over the canvas, it's important to create those little beams of light poking through the clouds.
Very well then, that's Frank down. We can of course skip right over Kathleen, since the only thing to contrast her against is her vastly and inarguably superior non-existence in the game. And with that said, why don't we go in order of appearance, starting with Sarah?
Well now, Sarah is such a charming and innocent little girl with such an adorable little smile. And I just have to say, I love the added color they brought to her on the show. And her hair, well, of course I think they really did wonders in improving the character's hair from that old flat look to such a lively appearance, like a happy little bush. Although I could probably offer her some advice on how to get it to defy gravity just a tad more.
Well, you certainly haven't said much regarding anything outside her physical appearance, but seeing as how the actress more or less plays the role to the letter, I suppose we can just move on to Tommy.
Well, he's just the same terrific and dependable uncle in the show as he was in the game. But once again, I just love how they added some color to the character. Just like Joel, they took that white canvas and painted it with just a hint of brown. Just fantastic.
Right, very well. Next up, Tess.
Oh, now, I just thought that the addition of those streaks of gray streaming through the show version's hair added just so much to highlight her aging beauty. And this version of Tess sure is a lot nicer than the one in the game. Though I'm not sure what made her want to kiss that icky zombie. That was kind of weird.
It was. And moving on, next up I believe we have Marlene.
Oh, now, what can I say? She was just perfect the way she was. And the showrunner sure did the right thing by just letting things be.
I will say, if it isn't broken, then surely there's no need to try tampering with things. A wise decision on the show's part to keep with the actress from the game as well. Now, seeing as Ellie is the next character we're introduced to, and we've already established that the HBO version is terrible, let us move on to Bill.
Oh, now Bill is absolutely one of the more improved characters in the show. I just love what he was able to do in making that little town his own, and I'd even say that it looked like quite the charming place to live. Who knows? Maybe there's a deer who lives there. Or maybe even a little squirrel or two nestled in somewhere just happy as can be. Bill did such a terrific job keeping all those nasty zombies and raiders out. There could be just dozens and dozens of happy little critters living in there. And the happiest creature of all was good old Bill. With the love of his life alive and well, he was able to be a shining light of positivity for Joel, rather than the crabby, potty-mouthed fatso he was in the game.
I'll ignore your condescending remark regarding, as you put it, potty-mouthed and crabby people who just happen to carry a bit of extra weight, and allow us to move on to Henry, who I believe is next on the list.
Oh, now, Henry was just fine, and the actor who played him on the television sure did a magnificent job. And there's certainly nothing wrong with it, but he did basically play the character exactly as he was in the game. What I happen to find truly lovely is what the show did with his little brother, Sam. Aging him down about 4 years, making him deaf and giving him AIDS made it just all the more heartbreaking when he finally meets his demise. And I always say, in order to appreciate the wonder and beauty in life, you got to get real dark sometimes.
It was leukemia, not AIDS, but don't let's harp on it too long because you're beginning to frighten me a bit, so let's just keep things moving and talk about David.
Now hold on there, Chris. I believe you've skipped right over the lovely Maria. And once again, I gotta say that it was simply magnificent how they took something so bland and just mixed that color right in there. And she's another one who was able to create a happy little place to live. But unlike Bill, she did it with a little help from others, and she was never afraid to share it.
While the inner Marxist in me is tempted to remark on her conflating of communism in the sense that people such as Joel almost certainly understand it, with the notion of people banding together for the sake of survival within the context of a zombie apocalypse, as it were, I'll avoid the urge for now in the interest of expediency and time constraints. So let's quickly move on to David and James, so we can begin wrapping this thing up.
Well then, I'll say that James sure does seem like an improvement over the game. Of course, giving our good friend Troy Baker an opportunity to show off a different side of himself in his performance is a mighty big part of that. And you know, while I wouldn't have minded them mixing in just a bit more color on him like they did with so many of the others, the glistening of alizarin crimson down his neck after Ellie just pushed that cleaver in there was a nice touch. Now, as far as David goes, I do think that they did the right thing to make such a mean old son of a gun just a bit less soft-spoken and initially pleasant. And thinning out his hair and beard was a wonderful choice, too. The David of the game was just too darn handsome and likable to believe as a real bad guy. I will say, though, that I'm not the biggest fan of making such an awful man a practicing minister. I'd sure have been happier if they just left the good old Bible out of it.
Funny, the addition of such a detestable and loathsome tyrant proselytizing from the Bible is one of the very few additions that managed to work for me. But once again, I'll abstain from going off into a tangent on religion, just as I did earlier when it came to political systems, as it seems we have now arrived at the end of our discussion regarding this largely pointless show. And if it's quite all right with you, Bob, I will now see myself out. The remake of Resident Evil 4 beckons me, and I've no doubt that our viewers will be eagerly awaiting our report on that.
Oh, shit. Now you're speaking my language. I've been looking forward to massacring as many parasite-ridden Spanish villagers as I can aim my shotgun at. We'll see you next time, you scrotums.